Alright guys, so if you've been following tech news recently, you know that Microsoft Hololens is all the rage, all that everyone's talking about right now. So I figured I would jump in. I haven't actually used it yet, but I want to talk more about how useful I think it is and how well it's going to be received. Is it actually going to be something that people are going to use? Basically, I think yes, but I'll explain why. Now, the general consensus is that HoloLens is absolutely amazing with one primary drawback. Now, the holograms actually apparently appear what you would expect. Like, reports say they're solid, they're opaque, unless there's something really bright behind it, kind of, and they pretty much work how you'd expect. The response to commands is really fast, and it's also really intuitive. You got the L air tap, which people apparently can do on their first try without really having to practice, and the headset is also really apparently very comfortable. I've heard reports that, you can wear it for a while without really feeling any discomfort at all, which is a big plus because you're supposedly going to be wearing this for, long projects. It has to be comfortable, so that's good. Now, obviously there is one drawback that you definitely have heard of if you know anything about it, and that is the field of view. It is very small. However, I'm unsure about how I feel about this. If that's the only drawback, there's a few things you have to consider. It's not that bad if that's the only drawback, depending on how you're going to use it. This isn't virtual reality. This isn't going to be replacing entire rooms and stuff like that. We might get to that point, but that's more, the job of like virtual reality, like Oculus and Vive. This is supposed to basically project images to be used as a tool. It's not going to be, replacing, a room or anything like that. Now, of course, we want the widest field of view as possible, and people do complain that, unless you're looking directly at a thing, it's going to get clipped, which of course will be very annoying. But if you're using it for a very specific purpose, a lot of times they do an example of surgery. If you're looking at one specific hologram, you might be able to get away with that field of view if it's only one thing you're looking at. Now, if they are doing the demonstration with the video, like projecting onto a wall, I can see how that can kind of be not that practical because you might be looking at the big screen on the wall and you only see a portion of it, which is that's useless. So I really want to see them increase the field of view. Of course, that's nothing new. Everyone's going to be saying that. But there are limitations to how they can do this. Now, the reason that virtual reality can get away with these on these headsets is that, they have a lens. And the lens basically turns a screen. It can basically, you're looking through a lens that expands the field of view, whereas this, it's a flat projection. So the limitation is the ability to project the image onto a flat surface. It's a completely different technology. Honestly, I'm not that well versed. I'm not that qualified to talk about it. But the main ability for headsets that are covering your whole thing to get field of view is that it's using a lens and a bigger screen. So why don't I talk about how I think this is going to be received? Honestly, I think in its current form, it is definitely useful. Will I buy one? It's going to really depend on the price point. I mean, I would really like to be able to do some of the stuff they demonstrate in the projects, like, putting a movie on your wall, or, seeing all these different little gadgets you can place virtually in your home. Of course, with that small field of view, though, the usefulness of it is going to be really limited. I mean, is it really worth it to wear this thing around your house if it's only going to be useful for, when you're only looking at your table head on? You know what I mean? So it's only going to be useful certain specific times in certain specific places in your home. It might just be easier to carry around your phone. So I think this is going to be very useful in very specific situations, depending on what you're using it as a tool. And that's really what it is, a tool. I don't think it's ready for the general consumer to buy because they've kind of been a little bit misrepresenting the field of view in their demos. They kind of show as if like the whole room is being replaced, but that's not the case. So a lot of people are going to get the wrong idea. They're going to be very disappointed if they buy it based on those demos, I think. However, if you are using it for a very specific purpose, such as, looking at a blueprint or just manipulating and designing a certain object that only has to be right in front of you, I definitely think that could be very useful, very good tool. So from what I understand, they are kind of pushing this towards like creators like engineers and more scientific based things as opposed to an entertainment device at this point, which I think makes sense. I think that you're definitely going to have to increase that field of view to get it into the general market. And before that, it's going to be all about virtual reality. I think virtual reality might even be a completely different market. Maybe Microsoft will never really try to get that whole replacement. But I think it definitely has to do with how they market it. If they market it like a similar thing to VR, virtual reality, and it's not that at all, people are going to get pissed off and it's going to be kind of backlash. But other than that, there's really not much I can say about it at this point. I haven't used it. Apparently it's going to be at E3, so I will try to get my hands on it. When I go to E3, I will be there, and I'm going to really try to see what it's all about so I can get a better idea of what it might be useful for. And also, when it comes out, depending on how much it costs, I really want to see it. Just, I was an early adopter of Google Glass, even though, it wasn't terribly useful. I think it was cool, and I would have hated myself if I never got to try it. So I'm at least glad it was worth it to try, and I think that's going to be the same thing with the HoloLens. Now, it's really going to be interesting to see how the general public feels about this. How about you guys let me know and explain to others what you are expecting out of this and what you think is the biggest drawback and what it's going to need for you to shell out, say, $500 to $1,000 for this thing. Let me know, and others in the comments. I'll be reading them as well. So that's pretty much it. Why don't you guys like the video, subscribe. I try to make new videos at least once a week. You can also follow me on Twitter, check out some previous videos, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys next time. If you have a recommendation for a video topic, let me know, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.